presentation is by Heather Sachs, a good friend of mine, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. She's just a wealth of knowledge that she's going to bring to us. We're going to talk some about the Developmental Disability Day at the legislature that's coming up in February, give you some brief updates, and talk about how we have a few gatherings set up for you to help prepare you if you want to participate in that event on Developmental Disabilities Day in February. So with that, we'll get started. So again, Heather Sachs is with us. She's the co-director of policy and advocacy for the National Down Syndrome Congress.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. I am Heather Sachs. As Patty said, I'm the co-director of policy and advocacy for the National Down Syndrome Congress. I'm also one of you. I am a mom from Maryland with 3 kids, and my 19-year-old daughter, Leah, has Down syndrome. We're not quite in the self-directed world yet, but it's definitely coming up on us very quickly. And I've been following what's been going on with everything, and Patty's been keeping me really well informed. I'm very active and one of the original co-founders of MDAC, the Maryland Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. And as Patty said, I work for NDSC, the national organization, doing policy work and grassroots advocacy. So let's go to the first slide. So I just want to go through a basic agenda of what I'm going to be talking about. There will definitely be time at the end for Q&A, and also my email box is open. You know, if anyone has any personal questions or wants to run anything by me relating to grassroots advocacy, I'm happy to get back to you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about Maryland Basics and the way it's structured. I'm assuming that you guys all, have a pretty good baseline of knowledge. You're doing such amazing work. And then I'm going to talk about the crux of it, which is building relationships with your elected officials, the why, when, with whom, and how you do it. Basically, what is advocacy and what are some ways that you can advocate in an effective way? You'll see that a big theme that comes up is the need to always tell your story. And so NDSC has developed some tools for that, including a template one-pager that I'll share with you. I'll talk a little bit about NDSC's other advocacy resources. And then, as I said, I'm happy to answer questions and answers at the end. So let's go to the next slide. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Maryland State Legislature. So, as you guys probably all know, every state legislature is different. I do a lot of work on the federal level, but being a Maryland resident and a parent advocate in Maryland, I've become very familiar with what goes on in Annapolis over the years. There is the link to the Maryland General Assembly. You guys probably all have bookmarked that already, but you can really find any information you need there in terms of, who your state, representatives are, what committees they serve on, what the critical dates are for certain, actions to occur. Really anything you need is on there. Maryland does have a very short session compared to a lot of other states. It's only a 90-day legislative session. It already started. And so now we're in the sprint to, April 7th, which is sine die, when they shut it down. A 90-day session means that everything moves very, very quickly. A lot of work is actually done before session actually opens. Bills are pre-filed, positions by legislators are already taken, if not publicly, then privately. And a lot of work is done before session. I know you guys have already been doing a lot of work. And this will carry, hopefully a lot of issues will be resolved this year, but it will certainly be a continuing conversation over the year. The Maryland State Legislature is bicameral, meaning 2 houses, just like the federal government. And there's 47 state senators and 141 delegates in the House of Delegates, which is the lower chamber. It meets annually, which, believe it or not all states do. But we have to realize it's only a 90-day session, and the legislators actually have careers. They are not, for the most part, full-time legislators. So whether they're practicing law or teaching in a classroom or whatever they do outside of their Annapolis session, just realize it's a little bit different from advocacy on the federal level, where, you know, those folks are in it, you know, year round. And so this just something to always keep in the back of your mind. If you do not know who your state senator and state delegates are, please go to that link, write them down, and everyone should have them either known in your head or written down by the end of this call, because it's very important to know who these people are. And I'm going to talk about how to build relationships with them. Let's go to the next page. So just like at the federal level, there's leadership in the Maryland State Legislature. Each party has leaders. I saw that Bill Ferguson was just sworn in again as the majority leader. There are also committees. Again, all this information is on the Maryland Legislature website. The key committees that we tend to see for disability issues are in the Senate, the Budget and Tax Committee, the EEE Committee, which used to be EHE, Energy, Education, and the Environment. In the House, it's Appropriations, HGO, Health and Government Relations, and Ways and Means. There are other committees as well, but those tend to be the main committees where our issues reside. I'm pointing this out because when you go to the website to figure out who your legislators are, please take note of what committees they serve on. It's very important. And please take note whether they are a chair or a vice chair of one of those committees, and whether or not they serve in, you know, leadership of their party. Those people are really elevated in terms of the necessity to contact them, to establish relationships with them. The people that head up the committees, just like on the federal level, are really the the gatekeepers. So they decide whether or not a bill, you know, comes before their committee, even for a discussion. So a lot of bills are just kind of wither on the vine and die because the committee chair or vice chair is not invested in it, and, you know, they don't think it's worth bringing it up to discuss. So again, take a look at these committees, cross-reference it with your list. If you have any folks on these committees, those people will be even more important to reach out to in the coming days. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so then there's also the Maryland State Administration, and I know you're all very familiar with this. We are currently under the Moore administration. There's a whole host of cabinet secretaries. They're all nicely listed with nice pictures on Governor Moore's website that I've listed there. It's important to note about the cabinet secretaries that they're not elected or political positions. These are appointed positions. These are appointed positions by the governor. They tend to change from administration to administration, with some exceptions. I know Carol Beatty has been in there for a couple different administrations as the director of disabilities. Of the Department of Disabilities. But these are not elected positions. So what does that mean? It means that the power of the constituent is not quite as strong. And I'll talk about this in a minute. You also need to realize, and again, you probably have already encountered this, that they're often just kind of towing the party line, and they are, you know, they're really the cabinet of the governor, meaning it is up to them, just like in the federal government, to implement his agenda. So I point this out because if anyone has any connections, again, look at the website. If you have any connections with anyone in the governor's office or any key cabinet secretaries or folks with high up positions, say in the Department of Health, that would be really important to note. And a lot of the information that I'm giving you about building relationships with your legislators can also be applied to building relationships with folks in the cabinet. It's just really important to reach out to everyone that you can that's in some sort of power position. Okay, let's go to the next page. Oh, and I also wanted to quickly point out too that the administration and the Maryland State General Assembly do work together on a lot of issues, particularly when they're of the same party. You probably know that the Maryland General Assembly is very, very skewed, very heavily Democratic in this state, and obviously Governor Moore is a Democrat. But that doesn't mean that they are always on the same page of things. And as you have seen, and I know folks have been reaching out to their legislators, we can often use the legislators to apply some pressure onto the cabinet. So that's really important as well. So let's talk about building relationships. Okay. So, first of all, I just want to put it out there. It does not matter one bit whether or not you voted for the person that won. It does not matter if they are not in your same political party. You are their constituent. As soon as they are elected and you are in their district, whether you voted for them or not, they represent you. And they really generally want to get to know you and your family. I believe that most people, in politics still do have very good intentions. These are real people with families and jobs and, the usual duties that we all have. Many of them do have, family members with disabilities as well. They want to get to know you. And if you don't reach out to them, how can they do that? And I will say too that once you start building relationships with the legislators and with their staff, they will turn to you for advice and guidance. Once they see that you're a very knowledgeable constituent who doesn't get overly emotional, who always acts very professionally. Time and time again, we've seen this where they will call you up and say, "Hey, does SDAN would SDAN be okay with this particular bill, or if we did it a certain way?" And it's really important to try to position yourself in that place. Even if you're not an expert, just the ability for them to call you and then you to say to them, "Well, I'm not sure of the answer, but let me ask so and so who is an expert on this issue and get back to you." Then it becomes very comforting to their offices to know that there are certain very well-informed constituents who they can turn to. So let's keep that in mind as well when we build relationships. So let's go to the next slide and talk about when to build relationships. Now, hopefully many of you have already started building relationships with your legislators. And this is really a year-round process. Now, session has just begun, so it may be a little bit more difficult right now, given the compressed time frame of the session and how everyone in Annapolis is always just, running around crazy during these few months. But it's, you might as well start. I know that our, loved ones on this call are mostly adults, but folks are absolutely never too young to start advocating. That's my little buddy Evan in that picture. His parents have been taking him to Capitol Hill and also to Harrisburg. They live in Pennsylvania since he was a little baby, and he is now a teenager and is actually going to be speaking at our advocacy boot camp at our NDSC convention this summer. So he has grown up as an advocate even before he was verbal, and it's really made a big difference for their family to have access to their particular members of Congress. And we've leveraged that as, a grassroots organization. It's important to make contact when things are going well. And again, we're in session now. So now things might be a little bit more rushed, but after session ends, take the time to, just certain ways as, sending a card or making an appointment to stop by their office, really starting to introduce them to you and your family, putting a face to these issues is really important. Because then when something does go wrong and, you have some sort of a complaint and you're calling them, again, first of all, they know who you are, they know who your family is, and you've already established that credibility with them. And so they're going to take your request much more seriously. And do keep in touch with them throughout the years. Let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about relationship building. So In Maryland, as I said, we all have several state delegates and a state senator, and they all have staff. On the federal level, there's a lot more levels of staff. And so it becomes even more important on the federal level. On the state level, we actually have pretty good access to our legislators. They're regular people that work and live and worship and play in our communities. And so, we should be able to get access to them. Again, during this 90-day session, things might be a little crazy. But do not underestimate the power of staff. This is a picture of my good friend Rachel and my colleague and close friend Jawanda. She's our manager of grassroots advocacy for NDSC, and those are staff members of her senator, Representative Sharice Davids, and they've built up such a great connection with the staff. They send each other holiday cards. When Rachel graduated from high school, her staff, some of the staff sent her some presents, and it's just been really nice. The staff are so incredibly important because they are the gatekeepers to the elected officials. And so, they're the ones that, will let you know when they have an appointment. They're the ones that will often advise them on positions to take on certain issues. There's no way that the elected official can be an expert on every issue. So who do they go to learn about the issues? They really turn to their staff, and then their staff turn to constituents that have used their voices and informed them about certain issues. So please show staff, incredible respect, establish relationships with them. Don't be offended if you go in for a meeting and you think your meeting is supposed to be with your delegate, and then it's with a staffer instead, and they say, oh, so and so got called to a committee, or he's busy today. Staff can absolutely be just as important, if not more important. So recognize that. I talked about before how it would be good if you know folks that work in the governor's office or a key cabinet to establish or strengthen a relationship with them. And then also a lot of this, presentation applies to, federal elected officials and local officials as well, city council, school board, anyone that's a policymaker that has the ability to, impact your life, your family's life, is good to make a connection with. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so how do we do this, right? So the first thing is to get to know them outside the legislature. Again, we're in that 90-day legislative period, so it might be a little bit difficult now. I think most of them are living up in Annapolis, and obviously very focused on the session. But outside of this session, as I said, these are real folks. They are going to church and synagogue. Their kids are maybe playing in your kids' sports league. Maybe they're at the neighborhood 4th of July party because they live 2 streets away from you. Please seek them out and get to know them. If you see them in a store, say hello. Do not accost them. Do not start talking about your issues, but just introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Heather Sachs. I'm one of your constituents. I would love to get to know you. Would it be okay if I called your office and set up an appointment with you? That's a great way to do it. It will make them very happy that you're not delaying them from doing their errands. You've put a face to the request, and then you can say when you call the office, I met delegate so and so, and told her that I was going to call to make this appointment. Send them holiday cards, and any type of if you do a holiday calendar or anything. If the cards have pictures, even better. I've seen so many staff that tack those holiday cards to their bulletin boards in their offices, and they look at that every day. They could be looking at a picture of your loved one every single day and keeping that in mind when they are voting on issues that are impactful to them. And keep in touch when something good happens. Again, I said, the time to build staff relationships is not when we're in crisis. And I know we're in crisis now. I know. But after this session, you can still continue to build and cultivate those relationships, because I will tell you, there's always going to be issues, unfortunately. And we're always going to be advocating for our kids, just as we've been advocating since they were babies. So it's great to keep in touch when something really good happens. Your child, your kid, graduates from high school or graduates from a post-secondary program, or they get a new job. Have them write a letter to, your elected official saying, hey, this is, great news. I got a job. If there's any type of new research that comes out relating to, your child's disability, or relating to, Medicaid, or, any issues that are really important to us. Once you've established that relationship with staff or elected official, send them an email with an attachment. It's up to them whether or not they want to read it. But just getting on their radar, getting them information is good. And again, setting yourself up as a well-informed constituent, well-connected constituent, and someone that they can turn to for advice and influence in, their policy positions is sort of your goal of what you want to do. Meeting is so, so important. And I know a lot of us do virtual meetings, and it's so easy, myself included. But when you're first building relationships with staff and with the elected officials, if you can get to Annapolis or their local office, it's much more impactful to actually meet with someone in person where you're face to face sharing your story. As a fallback, better to do a virtual meeting than no meeting at all, of course. And virtual meetings, I think, are just fine for follow up. But when you're first establishing that first relationship, try to get there in person. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so just some other ideas of building relationships. A lot of us are active in local support groups. I'm active in our local Down syndrome Montgomery County group. Every year we have a Down syndrome awareness walk. Every year we invite the entire Montgomery County delegation, Republicans and Democrats, to attend our walk as VIPs. We usually get quite a few of them that respond, and they come. They bring their families, which is great. And we always have, we always assign someone to kind of walk them around. It's usually a self-advocate that's walking them around and introducing them to folks. They want to get to know their constituents. And so it's really important to give them these opportunities. If they don't know about them, then, obviously they can't come. So consider doing, inviting them to some of these community events. And then here's a little thing I want to talk about: massaging the egos of legislators. When they do something good, and by good, I mean something that you think will be good for the community, or that, is not going to hurt. Thank them publicly, please. Legislators are so used to hearing complaints from people and from people trashing them on social media. And we're going to talk about not to do that in a minute. They hardly ever get these public kudos. And by just going on to, whatever social media platform you're using, X, TikTok, whatever, liking what they're posting, if they, commenting on their posts, if they're proud of something and they post about a certain bill that passed, just taking the time to write a couple words, thank you so much, so glad to have you representing us. Just anything like that. Again, showing that you're watching them on social media, you're a constituent, you're publicly participating in that. And so, as much as you can give them kudos would be great. Staff follow social media. They also, what I've found out, save very negative social media responses. There is nothing that can be deleted on social media, whether you delete it or not. You never know who has screenshotted it. And so it will really, really destroy your relationship with your elected official if you start trashing them on social media. And I cannot emphasize that enough. There's a mantra that we use all the time, that there's no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. Again, your elected official represents you. You may not agree with them on every issue. You're probably not going to agree with them on every issue, but you need them to be there for you when the issues are important to you. And you can't count on them to do that if you've publicly shamed them for voting a way that you didn't want them to. Now, when you get to the point where you've established an actual relationship with them, you can absolutely pick up the phone and call their office or send an email to their staff and say, hey, I was really disappointed that you voted this way on this particular bill. This is the way it's going to negatively impact me. And maybe can we set up an appointment and talk about this? They much more prefer, and it's a much more professional approach, that personal reach out to them, again, where they're seeing you as a well-informed, very level-headed constituent who they can turn to when making their policy positions. So okay, let's go to advocacy. So we throw in society, the word advocacy is thrown around to mean many different things. We talk about self-advocates. We talk about advocacy in an education context when you're in an IEP meeting. What I'm talking about here is policy advocacy. And that really, the crux of policy advocacy is really telling your personal story to make a change. You absolutely do not have to be an expert on the issues. Most of us are not experts on these issues. You do not need statistics or data. There are plenty of people that are involved in any type of advocacy effort that are experts and that do have that information. What you need to do is, as a constituent, you need to put a face on the name. You need to put a face and a story to the issue. If any questions that come up to you that you can't answer, again, the best thing to do is to say, don't make something up. Don't, give inaccurate advice or an answer. You just say, I'm not sure of that answer. Let me ask and I will get back to you. And then absolutely follow up and get back to them. They will respect that a lot more than you either just dropping the issue or, giving them a wrong answer. We have all been advocates since the day either our child was born with a disability or developed or was diagnosed with the disability. We know that. We know it's not easy, and it's a fight in every aspect of our lives, and it's exhausting, and I fully understand that. But if we don't keep pushing and advocating, no one's going to do it for us. And so we've got to dig down deep and find that fire and keep going. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so these are just some ways, again, that you can reach out to your elected officials. Calls. So there are many organizations have what's called action alerts. At the national level, we have a action alert system. I put a link to it in the end of this slideshow. I believe some of the state organizations have it as well, such as the ARC, the Maryland Disability Rights, maybe. Get on these lists for action alerts. You can go to their websites and they'll typically have a button that says sign up for our action alerts or whatever. Action alerts are super easy. The way we do them at NDSC is we put everything you need in there, all the talking points, the contact information. We actually have a software that will immediately, when you send an email, send it to the right offices based on where you live. And so it's really important, though, when an organization sends an action alert to respond to that action alert. This is the easiest form of advocacy you can do because it literally will take 1 minute. You'll call the office and someone will answer and you'll read the talking points that the organization has given you and maybe personalize it a little bit. And then, they're taking notes on the other end, and that's the end of it. Again, they want to hear from constituents. And what happens is a lot of these policy initiatives or how they're going to vote on something, a lot of it really is a numbers game. And we've gotten confirmation about this on the federal level. Again, there's a lot more staff in the federal legislative offices, so it's often like an intern or something that's answering the phone there. But they literally are taking a tally of calls for and against a certain issue. And at the end of the day, if they've got a lot of calls against a certain issue and, our group's not calling and not telling them what we feel, they think that their constituents are in favor of them voting against that issue. So again, it's using your voice, reaching out, playing the numbers game. If they're getting barraged by calls from constituents in a district, that's going to mean something to them. They're always thinking of the next election. and you can vote for them whether you want to or not. And so they're always thinking, how can I accommodate the needs of my constituents? On social emails are really important. A lot of the websites, at least on the federal level now, have gone to these email forms that you have to fill out. I think those are not so great because they typically just kind of get lost in the shuffle and go to an intern. It's better than nothing. But if you can get an actual email of a real person in that office, it's much easier to get on the state level. I mean, it could literally just be calling the office and saying, hey, could I get the email for, so and so's chief of staff? They're going to give it to you. You're a constituent. And so send that individual email to a person. If it's not the right person, no big deal. They're going to forward it to, whoever needs to see your email and loop you in. And then you've got a second staff connection or a third staff connection. So it's really important. On social media, you've got to like everyone, whether you like them or not, because you need to follow their social media. And as I said before, tagging them, using hashtags are really important for particular advocacy efforts. I'm not sure if you guys have a hashtag, but that might be helpful as well. And please, please, please stop yourself from writing anything negative on social media. At NDSC, we always say, we criticize policies, not people. And I think that's a really good, approach to keep taking. There's no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. So do not burn any bridges because you get, emotional and put out a nasty tweet to someone. Another way to reach out is to submit written testimony, always written testimony. You can always do that. The instructions for doing that are on the Maryland state government website. I think they just changed the procedures this year. Again, that's always a numbers game too. So if there's a request that comes out that we need folks to submit written testimony on something, please, please do it. In terms of verbally testifying at hearings, that's usually more of a, direct effort from the legislators that are, bringing up a particular issue. And that's usually an invitation only type thing, and a very strategic effort. But again, if you're positioning yourself as a constituent who is well informed, very, level headed, has a great personal story to tell, there's a good chance that your legislator would reach out to you, if they're the ones that are in charge of getting witnesses for a hearing and asking you to testify. So, please keep that in mind. And again, with the regular keep in touch, even if it's just a holiday card, forwarding something of interest by email, just letting them know that you're out there. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, how can I advocate? Show up. I know that this is hard. I get it. We all have a million things going on. It is more important now than ever, particularly because the legislative session is only 90 days and things go so, so quickly. It's super important to meet with your legislator and staff during this session. I know that, you guys are going to go to DD Day and there'll probably be some other opportunities. Start building those relationships or, enhance those relationships. Hearings and briefings, we talked about testifying, but a lot of times it's important just to show up and pack the room. And again, the call will come from, these advocacy organizations. Sometimes they'll say, hey, we want you to show up. We want you to wear this particular color, or they'll give out signs. They just want bodies in the room. And so if you can do that, if you can give up your afternoon or whatever it is to go, one person really does make a difference. So please keep that in mind. There's always opportunities for town hall meetings. I know legislators have like breakfast or, happy hours or something. If you can get to any of those, that's great, because that's a really good, tends to be much smaller groups, in a non-pressure environment. And that's a really great way to build a relationship with your legislator and their staff. Again, numbers game with rallies at the Capitol. We want people to show up, in Annapolis and in DC, because we're going to be dealing with a lot of issues in DC this session now. And then structured advocacy days are great, like DD Day in Maryland. And I know that SDAN is going to be on top of that and giving you guys talking points and everything. All right, let's go to the next page. I just want to point out that's my buddy, Frank Stevens. He testified before Congress several years ago on a Down syndrome funding bill, which did pass. His testimony was so amazing. It had like millions of views. He went viral. And it was so amazing to, hear this man with Down syndrome talk about the value of his life and why this research funding was important to improve his life. And again, sharing personal story really, really made a difference. Let's go to the next slide. The power of self-advocates. They are absolutely the most effective advocates. I have seen this in person. I can go into the most difficult, contentious office on Capitol Hill, and if I have a person with Down syndrome with me, immediately the tone changes. Immediately. People are generally respectful. Self-advocates need to be engaged in all aspects of advocacy. Yes, we have different capabilities and interests and preferences, but there are absolutely ways to engage everyone where they are and also to teach them new skills if they're interested. I'm going to talk in a minute about the one pager, which is a very valuable tool. But there are lots of different public speaking opportunities. I know Maryland has partners in policymaking. There's different advocacy trainings, Hill Days from national organizations. Please, talk with your self-advocates and get them some of this training and see if they're interested in doing, policy advocacy, because they really are the most effective. And again, let's make sure that we include folks at all levels. Maybe someone doesn't feel comfortable going into a legislator's office or is unable to speak or, give a, personal story. Well, then they're going to have the one pager. Let's go to the next page and I'll start talking about that. Okay. So a one pager is and actually that'll be in the next slide, but a one pager is going to be a very adaptive document that you guys are going to create, or you're going to actually work with self-advocates to create. And it's something that you're going to be able to use for many, many years to come with just making some modifications to it. And it's a very, very effective way to tell your story. As I said, it can be used in many situations, from, legislative and policy advocacy to, trying to get a job, doing advocacy at, your place of work or recreation. Once you get this one pager up and running, it's going to be a great tool that you're going to have. But let's go back to the slide before, because another way to advocate, and I think this might actually come in handy for many of you with these current advocacy efforts, is to do a really short video. I don't know if you're able to open up that link.
Yeah, hold on. Give me a minute. I haven't done this before. Ah.
So I'll just talk about what it is. Oh, there it is. Okay. So a video is a great way for a, self-advocate in particular to tell their story. It's got to be short, and it's going to be something that you're going to post on social media. You're going to tag your, delegates and state senator in. You're going to send it as an email attachment to the staff members that you have a relationship with and say, hey, our family would really like you to take this particular position, or, we would like you to vote a certain way, and here's why. And then they're going to look at the video. And this is something that's really easy for them to share and to process. Do we have it, or?
Yeah, almost there.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
I'll just go through the rest on that slide too. It's also a great strategy to do some, okay, well, let's go to the video first. So this is my friend Rachel. She was in one of the other slides. She is like an extraordinary advocate who has been doing it since she was very, very young. And she also loves to do social media. So this was something that she put together a few years ago yet, when we were advocating to get the Able Age Adjustment Act passed. Okay, let's play it.
Rachel here. I'm going to call it January. I've been saving money in my Able account. Some of my friends can't open Able accounts. I need you to please sponsor the Able Ages Act so others who need an Able account can get them. But what will make my heart happy?
That's her thing. She ends everything with, please do this because it will make my heart happy. And you'll see the transcription service was awful. As you see on Zoom, they clearly need to do some work with interpreting, for people with some speech challenges. But a real short video like that can be very, very effective. You'll see in that picture, during the last Trump administration, we were, all hands on deck to fight against the Medicaid cuts, where unfortunately we're going to be finding ourselves again. And I had my daughter start her advocacy journey by, doing pictures, and we were sending out pictures and posting it. And she had also done a short video. So just something to consider if your self-advocate is willing to do that. It's also great to, if you have any type of press contacts, submit, letters to the editor or op-eds. Again, not criticizing particular people, not burning bridges with any particular, delegates or senators, talking about the issues, not the people, and how the issue impacts you and your family. There's podcasts, there's TikTok, blogs. There's a whole world of ways to do advocacy. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We are almost done. So we just talked about the one pager. Here we go. Here is a sample, the next slide. So here's a sample template, and it generally has this format, and you'll see at the link, it's on the NDSC website, so you're welcome to go download it, or it's also just something really easy to recreate. And so this is, again, something that ideally a self-advocate would write and, present. You can also do it as a parent, though. Any way that you want to get your story across would be great. And it's just the opening. It's emphasizing that you are a constituent. So I am from, and whatever the hometown is. And then you also have to be really careful to put your name and address at the bottom. They don't really want to hear from people that aren't their constituents. They want to hear from the people that can vote for them. Those are the voices that make the most difference for each particular legislator. And then here you're introducing yourself and where you work or go to school. That's the part that kind of stays the same. And then with the ask at the bottom, that's where you can customize it and modify it. SDAN will certainly give you the asks that you need to be pushing this session. It's very, very helpful to put a picture on it, again, so there's a face to the issues. And this is something that you will leave behind, that, if you're meeting with a legislator, you'll bring and give it to them. You can send it by email to them, just to, tell them about one of their constituents and their story. Let's go to the next page. This is just a sample of my friend Jessie Smart's one pager. She's another extraordinary advocate who I've worked with for many, many years. And that's just an example of hers. And she talks about a bunch of different issues in this one. This one, she was advocating to remove the R word from their Mississippi code. But again, she can easily modify that for anything, for any type of ask. Okay, let's go to the next page. So at NDSC, we have a really strong self-advocate council. And so over the years, we've worked with them to develop a policy advocacy toolkit for self-advocates. It's actually for anyone, but it's really in plain language and, the basics of the whole legislative process, how a bill becomes a law, which is geared to the federal level in this document, but is very similar in Maryland. And there's just a lot of great advice in there from other self-advocates. So it's a free download, definitely worth sharing with your folks, particularly self-advocates that are interested in getting more active in advocacy. Let's go to the next slide. Again, NDSC has action alerts. Our action alerts are on the federal level. We don't do state action alerts, but I encourage you to go and sign up for them because obviously a lot of advocacy is going to be needed on the federal level. And we're already mobilizing from fighting back against, block grants and work requirements in Medicaid to trying to protect the Affordable Care Act and the Department of Education, and the list goes on and on and on. Our work is really cut out for us over the next few years, and please do what you can on the federal level as well, even if it's just something quick like responding to one of NDSC's action alerts and sending an email to your member of Congress. It's a numbers game, so we really need you to do that. Let's go to the next slide. Just a little plug for our convention. You certainly do not have to have Down syndrome or be part of the Down syndrome community to come. It's an amazing convention, usually brings in between 3,000 and 4,000 people, tons and tons of self-advocates. And there's a whole separate youth and adults conference for self-advocates, which are workshops taught by self-advocates for self-advocates. So just if anyone's interested, registration opens in March. And at the convention, next slide, every year, my policy team and I do an intensive advocacy training boot camp. Again, we really tend to focus on self-advocates in this, and self-advocates are both presenters with us and audience members. We also have a lot of parents in the audience too. But if you do get to the convention, then we highly recommend coming to the advocacy training boot camp as well. Okay, next slide. So as I said, started off by saying NDSC does a lot of grassroots advocacy, and we have a National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. We now have over 1,000 advocates from across the country who are all mobilized and ready to spring into action now. Again, you absolutely do not have to have Down syndrome. A lot of folks don't that are part of our coalition. Would highly recommend you signing up. It's free. There's the QR code. You'll get invited to a closed Facebook page for NDAC, which is really helpful because it's where members help members and talk about particular issues. You'll get ideas from what's going on in other states too. So please consider joining that. Please also encourage your self-advocates to join that. We really like to have self-advocate participation. Okay, next slide, and then we're pretty much done. There's our social media handles and everything, so feel free to, like and follow us. And then finally, on the last slide, I just wanted to leave you with a few mantras that I always keep in mind after years and years of doing this. One is nothing about us without us. I think we all know this one. Absolutely, self-advocates have to be involved in any advocacy efforts that we do. They are the strongest voices. And so we need to give them the tools and, the confidence to participate at whatever level and, whichever way that they can. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. Again, you're not going to agree with your legislator on everything. They may really make you mad by voting a certain way on a certain issue, but you are going to need them, and you're going to need them to see you as a well-informed, level-headed constituent that is not going to slam them when you disagree. So please keep that in mind. Always be respectful to staff, to legislators. You can get a lot more flies with honey than vinegar, right? So keep that in mind. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that means when we are trying to get a bill passed or, a certain policy passed or overturned, it is never going to be perfect. It's not. That's just the nature of compromise. And in this day and age, even more compromises often have to be made. It is really not helpful if you're holding out for something to be absolutely perfect. We need to push, but we also need to take what's given that's going to advance our cause and know that most advocacy efforts are many years long. And if we can just keep incrementally getting some gains and building these relationships, it will be a lot more effective. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And then finally, it's one person really can make a difference. And so I hope that everyone tries. And that's about it. So I have time for Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heather. That was awesome. Really was great. We do have some questions for you. I think one was you were talking about having everybody, all the self-advocates, make an effort to advocate. What do you suggest for folks who are nonverbal, and how well are they received with legislators?
Received very well has been my experience. I've actually gone to Capitol Hill with an advocate that uses an assistive technology device. Most of them actually think it's like really cool. They're like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. Show me how this works." And everyone obviously has different capabilities. For someone that's nonverbal, they can still do a one pager. And even if they can't write it themselves, they can give the information to someone to scribe it for them. If they feel comfortable showing up, even if they don't want to speak in the meeting, it's much more important to have them there to put a face to the issue, even if they're literally just standing there saying hello and handing over the one pager, and then you take it from there and talk. Very, very important to engage them in whatever way they feel comfortable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What happens if your representatives are not on the important committees? What do you recommend then?
Build the relationships anyway. Keep going at it strong, because guess what? Committees change every year. So if your rep's not on an important, on one of those key committees this year, they might be next session. They might be the chair next session or the vice chair. And so if you've already established that relationship, then that relationship becomes even more important when they go to leadership positions. Same thing with staff. We see staff shuffle sometimes. So make that relationship with their key staff. They may wind up being in the majority leader's office next session. You don't know. And then you already have that, window in for access.
Do you recommend that people not only contact and get a relationship with their own representatives, but also with key chairman, vice chair?
Not really. I have to say, so there's a difference between, building an actual relationship and, kind of answering an action alert, or, putting out a call for advocacy. So if there's action alerts or, messages that come out from our key, our leading advocacy groups that say, "Hey, can everyone please put in calls to, Ferguson's office on this issue?" Absolutely do it. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a constituent. But in terms of building the relationships, to be honest, they really just want to get to know the people that can vote for them. So now, if you happen to be active or run an organization that spans multiple districts in Maryland, then those are all your people, right? So, like I said, in Montgomery County, for our, Down syndrome walk, we invite the entire Montgomery County delegation to that walk. And so, keep obviously SDAN has folks all over the state, but you can leverage that too. If you run your local autism group or whatever, reach out to your members there too and see if anyone's an actual constituent of certain folks in leadership. I know Liz Zogby from MDAC is really good. She's got kind of a whole mapped out list of like who's in what district and who has relationships with who, and it's been really effective when we've had to target certain legislators for advocacy.
Great. What do you think is the best first contact? What media and what methods do you use to make that initial contact?
Really, if you can do it, it's the in-person meeting. I mean, really, just to say, you call the office, you say, "Hey, I'm a constituent, I'm going to be in Annapolis on this day." Pick a day. Maybe SDAN can meet or something one day. I know in the Down syndrome community, we celebrate World Down Syndrome Day every year in March. And a few years ago, we started going to Annapolis like 2 weeks before and handing out personal invitations and then socks. There's like a thing about mismatched socks in the Down syndrome community, these really brightly colored socks. And so every year now we get a big group together. We go office by office. There is no legislative ask. It is just, we're introducing ourselves. We're giving this invitation. Here's a fun pair of socks. They love it. The staff members like fight over the socks we've seen. But again, we always bring self-advocates with us. We let the self-advocates give the invitation, and those people show up at our World Down Syndrome Day event. We always have so many legislators come. But the best way to start a relationship, I think, is really an in-person meeting. And, there's lots of things that you can talk about. If you don't know them, it would be, obviously you're going to want to talk about your, self-directed, issues, but just requesting an introductory meeting for you and your family, just whoever's a constituent, you maybe go as a group and put a face to the issues.
One of the questions is an interesting one, and it talks about the anxiety people feel when they're going to be face to face with somebody who they haven't met before, or somebody in a position of some kind of power. Do you have any tips and tricks to manage people's anxiety?
It is the first time you do it, it is nerve-wracking. I mean, I was nervous the first time I did it, but you'll very quickly realize that they work for you. You are the constituent. You're the one that has the power to either vote them back into office or keep them out of office. And they genuinely want to get to know their constituents. And again, these are real people. And many of them do have strong connections to the disability community as well. So if you just approach it from the attitude of, they should be honored to be meeting with you, quite honestly. It's not every constituent that reaches out to them to get, to meet them and share their story. So, please take a leap of faith and do it. The inclusion of self-advocates is really amazing. I have never seen anyone in all of my years of advocacy treat a self-advocate with lack of respect in any of these Hill meetings that I do, or any meetings in Annapolis.
That's good to hear. Somebody else is asking, there's a fine line between holding somebody accountable and perhaps crossing that line and being aggressive or accusatory. So can you give us any tips on, where that line might be and how to stay on the right side of it?
Well, please always think before you post something, and maybe wait, if you feel like, saying something angry, or, maybe give yourself some grace and, wait to do that. As I said before, I go after policies, not people. So, whatever Trump does in the next, legislation, you will never see me or NDSC put out public statements against President Trump. Or any of the, cabinet that's coming in or whatever. It is not about the people. It is about the policies that can, help or hurt our loved ones. It is nonpartisan. It does not matter to me one bit what party someone is part of. If they're going to help us and our issues, great, they're my friend. And so, please remember that policies, not people. And, if you do get really mad about something, again, that's the time to, use the relationship that you've established and call them, or, send an email to the staff person that you met with and say, I'm really concerned that, so-and-so, your boss has taken this public position on this issue. This is going to negatively impact my family. Can we talk about this? And they will really appreciate that approach, rather than just that all out, I'm gonna publicly attack this person and shame them. Most people, I really do think, are well-intentioned and want to do the right thing and want to help people with disabilities.
We hope so, right?
We hope.
So I have a couple of broader questions, I guess, as all of the people on this call, or at least as far as I know, are members of SDAN. And we're wondering a couple of different things. One is, if there is a more global issue, if there's a bill, and there may be, but if there is a bill, then it's really specific, what your ask might be. If you're facing a more widespread series of policies and procedural changes that are affecting one's loved one, participant, in a negative way, what do you recommend in terms of your one-pager to communicate the, an overall negativity to the changes. And so.
Yeah, nope. Use the one pager. Ideally, you'd have a specific ask, but if not, it's all about telling your story. Everything is about telling your personal story, your family's story. So, for example, I said on the national level, we're all mobilizing. So I saw the ARC of the United States just the other day, who I would also recommend getting on their email and action alert lists, because they're really taking the lead in the Medicaid fight this time on the national level. I saw the other day the ARC of the United States sent out a call for stories on Medicaid and how Medicaid impacts you and why it's important to your family. And they're not asking for a specific, they're not doing a specific ask. They're going to send those stories up to Capitol Hill, whether or not there's a bill in place, at that time, to tell those elected officials how Medicaid impacts their particular constituents. Here, with all the issues going on with the self-directed waiver, you can absolutely put that in your one pager. You don't need a specific ask. You can say, I'm on the self-directed waiver. This is how I use it. This is, why these particular cuts or policies would make my life worse, and kind of list that out. Okay. But make sure that the issue is relevant to, sort of what you're fighting for at that particular moment in time.
Then another, just kind of as we are going to be advocating as sort of a individually, but as a unit, do you recommend that all of our one pagers have at least one identifying mark as being part of like the self-direction community? It could be an SDAN logo, or it could be a tagline or something. Do you recommend there be some way to tie them together, since you were talking about it being a numbers game? So can you give us a little advice on how?
I think it depends on your on the specific advocacy effort that you're doing. I'm actually a little bit torn on this question, because on one hand, it's good to have branding and look unified, but on the other hand, you don't want folks to just dismiss it outright if they keep seeing papers with, oh God, another SDAN one, another SDAN logo, another SDAN, so I'm kind of not sure on that one. I think you could also maybe do both, or maybe do a packet of, folks submitting their one pagers, and then you put the SDAN logo on the top, and you know what I mean? Say these are stories from folks in our SDAN community, but I almost feel like it's going to have more of a grassrootsy type of look, and sort of more unique. Each one might be perceived as more unique if they're not in like the exact same font and the exact same form.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I like the individuality of what you were saying, the uniqueness perhaps, but then there'd be one little something at the bottom of the page that is a uniting feature, but okay.
Yeah, I think that's just, personal preference. And again, I think it also depends, I guess, on how well-known SDAN is to the legislators, and, whether it would mean anything to them.
Gotcha. I think I have covered most of the questions in the chat at this point. So again, Heather, I've learned a lot from you today, and I really appreciate it. And looking forward to putting some of these things in action tomorrow, maybe later today.
That's great.
So again, very much appreciate you, and you're taking your time to share with us these really important ways that we can better our advocacy here in Maryland and for the self-directing community. I'm just going to scan one more time. There's a lot of thank yous in the chat, and feel free to stay. At this point, I think we're going to move over to the DD Day pieces, so we can talk about how to put Heather's excellent advice to work.
Thank you. And it's funny, I see this. We didn't coordinate slides, so that's good that we're saying the same thing. I'm going to put on my parent hat now and stay on. So yeah, I'm happy to, answer follow-up questions. I'll take a look at the chat as well. Thank you.
It's wonderful. So Patty, are you going to take it from here, or should I can do this one and then the committee? How are we going to do that? So DD Day is happening on February 13th. And go ahead, Patty.
Tell people what it is, though.
We have a whole slide on that in just a minute.
Okay. So Ginger, maybe you take it from here since you know how the slides are prepared.
Okay, so actually following up on what Heather was saying, we have a wonderful event called DD Day. We have details in a couple of slides, so we will give you that. But it's a wonderful opportunity to meet your legislators and also to stay in touch with each other. Okay, it's really important that you prepare your story, either in writing or a video. And in a couple of slides, we're going to talk about how SDAN can help you do that. We're actually putting together a presentation and some one-on-one meetings where we will help you prepare that story. And also, please be in touch with your legislators. You know, Heather wasn't kidding. We are in crisis, and everybody is in a slightly different crisis. So please reach out to your legislators and let them know we are in crisis, and you know, stuff is going to be coming at them, and we need their support.
So many of you have done a lot of advocacy in Annapolis already, and you've done your My Stories, and you've done your showing up at testimony and giving testimony and writing testimony. Up until now, SDAN has asked you to teach your legislator about what self-direction is and how successful it has been for you or your loved one, and to familiarize them with the concept that people do self-direct and not everyone receives their services in agency-based ways. And many of you advocated for the Self-Direction Act a couple years ago, and we're really involved doing that. Well, we feel like at this point, our systemic advocacy is not being as effective. We have not, you know what's happened. SDAN has not been able to meet with DDA on any regular basis. And when we have met with them, they haven't been very interested in anything that we had to say or what your experience is. And we've all experienced a great deal of policy changes and procedural changes. So we really are pivoting, and we're asking you to pivot to individual advocacy, telling your story, but focusing on those policy changes. And I love the way Heather put that: policy, not people. So that we all know that Maryland Department of Health and the DDA have changed policies, or the way they implement policies, over the last year that many of us, and most of us, have found damaging and of creating fear for the future and possibly risk to our future. We're asking that as you think of your story and you prepare your one-pager, that you focus on that. You know, it's almost irrelevant at this point how wonderful self-direction has been. It is more relevant what we risk to lose. I don't know what the next slide is, but go there and I'll see if I had something there, whether, okay, go back then. It was just in this slide. So as you think about this and you move forward, realize that it is up to you. We can only do so much, which we said to you last meeting, and we are continuing to do systemic advocacy efforts, and we'll tell you a little bit about those. But this is really important, that you do individual advocacy, show up in whatever way you can, and present your information in your one-pager that touches the heart of the staff person or the legislator in a way that they understand how your life has been changed by the policy changes that have happened. The people that we're talking to, the staffers and the legislators, they may have some tangential relationship to the disability community, but most likely they're not in our world. But they do know what it means to go without a paycheck, or to lose your job, or to not have the babysitter show up, or to not have a sense of what's going to happen to your adult child when you're gone. You relate to something they can relate to. They can't relate to IFDGS. They can't relate to my mileage wasn't reimbursed. They can't relate to many of the nuances and certainly the acronyms that we deal with, but they can relate to, I was on hold for 6 hours with a financial management company that manages that sends out the paychecks that my staff didn't get. I'm on hold with them 5 times a month. They can relate to that because they're on hold with Comcast. They're on hold with various companies such as that. So they can relate to those things. So think about that as you begin to ponder your story. And again, we'll talk more about how we can help you with those stories. Each of you have been emailing us, calling us, posting on social media. We know you're having these issues. Again, no name calling. Keep it centered on you, your child, or you personally, but the policy changes that are resulting in pain in your life. Okay.
Okay, so let's talk brass tacks. So there are a few things that we're going to be working on in the next couple of months. So the big opportunity is Developmental Disability Day at the legislature. And this is a day where the entire Developmental Disability Council pulls together advocates across the disability community to have a conference in Annapolis. It's held at the Graduate Hotel on West Street in Annapolis. And in the morning, they have basically sessions where they talk about issues. They have various different legislators and advocates come and speak to the disability community. And, a lot of the legislators who are there, they take a look at the room. And when you have 600 and some odd people in the room, that really makes a statement. Okay. It's also an amazing networking opportunity. And so we would really encourage you to come to DD Day. And then after the presentations are over, the next step is then to go to the Senate and the House and talked to your representatives. And basically, that's kind of what the day is set up to do, to actually facilitate these conversations with your legislators. Okay. The registration link for this event is not up yet. Okay. We have put a link in the slide where you can go and look at what the vision is for this event. And as soon as they put out the registration link, we will send out an email to our membership. So if you're not on the list, please get yourself on the membership list and we will send that information out to you. Now, that said, you need to schedule appointments with your legislators now because there are 600 people in the room and they all want to talk to various legislators. So you want to get on their calendar. Okay. So go ahead and we have some resources for you, how to find your legislators. I think Heather also had that link in her slides. And so you can find out who your senator is, who your delegate is, and then you can contact their office and make an appointment. Now, we will have a booth in the lobby of the Graduate Hotel on DD Day, and we will help you put together a packet to take into your legislator. Now, the one pager that Heather was talking about and that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of slides, that's something you need to do in advance. But we're going to be there to help you put together the packet. We're going to have some clear folders for you so you can put together your one pager, and we have some SDAN information of all of the issues that we're going to have available to put into that packet. We're going to help you, help guide you in, where to find your legislator, because sometimes those buildings are a little bit of a maze, and we'll do what we can to help you, to facilitate you working with your legislators. But before this happens, I mean, we can't write a one pager that morning. So you need to do that in advance. And again, we're going to help you do that. And you also need to have made your appointment in advance. to do that. We've also put a link here for parking because for those of you who have not been to Annapolis, during the legislative session, parking can be a real challenge. So again, you want to do that in advance so that you have someplace to put your car when you go to the event and you go talk to your legislators. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I mentioned that we were going to provide some help in writing that one pager. Okay, so we have set aside January 17th from noon to 1. That's 1 week from today. Okay, we will be sending out a registration link in an email. Okay, and just as Heather said, the most effective advocacy tool is your personal story and your relationship with your legislators. Okay. And as Patty said, you need to identify your most compelling issues. Okay. And again, it needs to not sound whiny. It needs to really say how it is that these policy changes have directly impacted you. Have you lost a support broker? Have you lost a nurse? Have you lost a DSP? Do you have staff that haven't been paid for 2 months? That's the kind of stuff. Have you lost vendors? Are your vendors going out of business because DDA is not paying them? These are the kinds of issues that they need to hear. Okay, you need to express those issues in a very concise way, right? So think elevator speech, think bullet points. You want to take advantage of the limited attention that you're going to get from these people. Make it easy for them to understand your issues. Okay, and absolutely avoid jargon and the weeds. When we're talking about policy, it is so easy to get into the weeds. They don't know our policy. They don't know our issues. Okay. As Patty said, do this in plain language. Do this in a way that they can understand. Okay. Again, we're going to talk about how to make an appointment with your legislators, but if you need a little assistance finding them, we are going to have sessions to support doing that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so again, I said that we are going to have this session on the 17th. In addition, we are going to open up some slots for one-on-one sessions with the SDAN DD Day committee. And we will help you write your story. We will give you feedback. We'll help you tailor it. We'll help you, make it in that plain language. Okay. And contact your key committee members and your legislators now. And the other thing is that if you can't make it that day, or you don't want to be fighting with 600 other people to talk to your legislator, you can do this advocacy on other days. You don't have to do it on DD Day, okay? There's something to be said about 600 people wandering the halls, but there's also something to be said about going and having a meeting on a day when it isn't crazy, okay? So again, choose when you want to make your appointment. SDAN will do whatever we can to support you in having materials available for that appointment. Okay, that next slide.
I guess maybe we should just check in and see about if there are any questions about DD Day. And there was one about how to schedule the appointments. Do people go to their legislator directly and try to schedule it, or is there some kind of a scheduling platform on that particular day?
I don't think there's any organized scheduling platform, so you are going to definitely need to go to your legislator's office. And I believe there are click-throughs on the Maryland General Assembly website, the where you find your member. I believe that each of the members has the ability to schedule appointments, and also they have a phone. And so you can give them a call and say that you want to schedule that appointment.
Yeah, I think that website has phones, and most of them, I think, have email addresses
Emails.
as well.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so the onus is on the individual person to go ahead and make their own appointment.
Correct.
Okay. So this next component of today's meeting is just to give you kind of an idea of some of the things that SDAN has been doing, given the information that we've gotten from our membership. So we have in process a written response to our December's joint briefing. I don't know how many people were able to tune in on that. It was broadcast live through the legislature website. HGO and Appropriations Committees held a briefing. They had speakers from the department, Maryland Department of Health, and Disability, the Developmental Disability Administration. They had FMCSs speaking, and they had a support broker, somebody from SDAN. And there were some things that were said that we wanted to clarify. So we are in the process of writing a clarification letter to go out shortly. We have been talking to various legislators, and so have some of our other advocates. And there is a possible new bill, not necessarily self-direction specific, but that would address a lot of our issues in terms of possibly having a work group to go through all of the issues that pretty much everybody is facing with changes in policy and procedures, DDA. So we will keep you up to date on what that looks like, and then obviously what we can all do to advocate, assuming that we're on board. One of the asks, I think, for this legislative session is to request a legislative audit on the Self-Direction Act. We see that many of the procedures and the policies that have been that have come out since January of last year do not comport or do not relate to the Self-Direction Act. In other words, they're not putting the act into effect. So we would like to request that the legislators, it was voted on unanimously by both House and Senate, and we believe they will be interested in the fact that what they voted on is not actually being enforced. The next thing we've been doing is talking to an attorney, a very limited scope. Lord knows there's a lot of issues out there, but we are trying to address that exact thing, that the Self-Direction Act is being violated by the department, and we hope to have a letter to that effect out in the next couple of weeks. The next thing we have done is we are working with a group, and there'll be more information on this, to do a training and some support on how to file an Office of Civil Rights complaint later this month. Within the next 2 weeks, I think the information will be out, and they will be holding, I think, a couple of different office hours to meet with individuals and or small groups to answer questions and to help people with the nitty-gritty of actually going through the process of the complaints and filing them. Part of the education will be under what circumstances your rights have been violated. So we look forward to we did a first piece with the Office of Civil Rights directly, and this is sort of a follow-up piece to help people who, all of us are a bit overwhelmed, be able to file an OCR complaint when it is warranted. And then lastly, all of this is costing us money. So if anybody has the ability to consider to do so, consider donating to SDAN to support this important work and our ongoing advocacy efforts. And lastly, I guess I want to thank everybody who came today, and all of our members, for the amazing advocacy that has happened so far in 2022. And I really look forward to working with each and every one of you to continue advocating for what is needed for us to have the best self-direction program possible. Carol, do you want to tell them about the event on Monday?
Okay, I put it in the chat. The ARC, in conjunction with People on the Go, is having a self-advocate conference / meeting / breakfast session. I'm not really sure what exactly they're calling it. It's free event, but you do have to register. It's at 10 o'clock. It starts at 10 o'clock at the Graduate Hotel. It does not appear that there's a virtual option. But Matt Rice and Tracy, I can't think of her last name.
Right, Tracy, right.
Right, from People on the Go are going to be kind of talking about being a self-advocate and how to present issues that are important to you. So it's hard to get to Annapolis. People might not, but if you're near there and you register, it might be worthwhile event. The other thing is there is a group of families that are considering hiring a lobbyist, and I think that was posted on our Facebook page. I'm not 100% convinced that that will help because we're our own lobbyists, but that's, up for that group of families to decide. So, not lobbyists, but you are educating advocate. We're not officially lobbyists because we can't be, but we are educating the legislators, and that's what you are doing as their constituents, is making them aware of your issues. So those two things are happening as well. There's a lot going on. There's also multiple other groups for support brokers that have started. So on Facebook. So a lot of people are actively involved now.
Yeah. So I guess let's go to the next slide and then we can take questions. So, this is the tried and true, like if you're having issues, you do the CCS support broker, contact the regional office, write to the secretary, and the deputy secretary. Continue to write your legislators and let them know of the difficulties that you're having. Contact the office or email them, CC them on any written things, the Office of Constituent Services, because those will get your issues on the record. DDA is counting the number of times people are contacting their department with issues. So next. So I guess this is an opportunity to answer some other questions in here. I think some of the questions have to do with like what's going to be the focus, and I think Patty and Heather kind of talked about it being unique and individualized to your own situation, in terms of what the changes have meant to you. In some cases, people have lost their nurse, people have lost their long-term support broker, people's DSPs haven't been paid and they've quit, or their vendors are no longer offering services to them. In other cases, people who are getting threats of denial of plans and some misinformation from folks. So I think one of the pieces that I'm reading in the chat is about participants' rights to clear information and rights to understand what your right of appeal would be. So I think we will unite, I think, on an ask. Potentially it would be to pass the bill if that is turns out to be a great thing for us. Probably to stop the policies and wheel them back until a work group can be formed, and the ask to do an audit on the department's capability or history of enforcing the Self-Direction Act of 2022.
Alicia, can I say
Yes.
something? So, what has not been said during this meeting is, any acknowledgement of the massive budget deficit that exists in the state of Maryland. So we know that that is going to be the dominant black cloud over this session. So the legislators are going to be faced with figuring out how to balance the budget. Do they have to raise taxes? Do they have to cut programs? So we know this is coming. So, that also guides our thoughts on giving you some counsel on what to be talking about this year. We certainly can't go in asking for anything. Nothing that costs money is going to go through anywhere this year. Nothing. right? The state has no money. There's a major deficit, $3 billion expected over the next so many years. You all been seeing the articles, but a work group doesn't cost a lot of money. To get to the bottom of what's really going on with the department and DDA and constituents and policy changes and everything you've been experiencing is not a big ask. There's not a big fiscal note to go with that. To ask for a legislative audit of the Self-Direction Act being implemented is not a big ask. It's not going to have a big fiscal note that goes with it. So we don't know what Delegate Guyton's bill is going to look like yet, but it will evolve over the next week or so or two. We'll be getting it out to people and information about that. We might have the ask that we will be wanting to support that bill. The ask always is full funding of the DD budget, because the governor will present his budget and each of the departments, and we're concerned with the Developmental Disability Administration, will present their budget. The DD budget will be presented. It does not have to be fully funded. It doesn't have we have a history of the legislature working it out to make sure that the DD budget is funded. So we know that one of the asks is always fully funding the Developmental Disability Administration budget. We don't know what that budget is going to look like yet, but that's one ask that's always. So we're talking about a few asks that we already know about. A legislative audit of the Self-Direction Act. Delegate Guyton's bill, which might be about a work group to kind of look at what's really going on and what needs to be improved, and the DD budget. So we know those are the things. We certainly cannot go in asking for anything that costs any more money or looking like any of our complaints are about money, because that's just simply not going to fly this year.
Yeah. There's
too much pressure on every single delegate and senator in regard to the money, the deficit.
Definitely. Paula had an interesting point, and one that is has struck me in the last couple of weeks, where minority and small businesses, women-owned businesses, such as many of our support brokers, are being put out of business by virtue of the fact that they have to choose between being a support broker for person A and also working for their own a participant who's in self-direction. So I do think there is a positive light on small businesses in this state, and that may be a way to bring out some of the truth about the negative sides of the policies that are being put forth. So what Patty said about the budget is absolutely true. We do not want to come across as it being a money thing, but in terms of people getting paid what they're owed for the jobs that they've done, that's the way the world works. And people being put out of business, that's the way the world is supposed to work. So did I miss any questions? If anybody else took a look here. There will be an email to help with all of this, the January 17th DD Day preparatory a Zoom meeting. And there will be an email as soon as those documents are prepared, in order for you to learn more about the appropriateness of filing an OCR complaint. And again, a big thank you to all of you for advocating with all of us. Thanks again.
Yeah. Let me put a plug out there. I wrote a few things in the chat, but the two organizations that put out legislative updates all through the session are the ARC Maryland. You can go to their website. They put out, you can sign up for their bill tracking, or just they do an email that comes out that is telling you what bills are going on and they will need people. They need people to come and like either fill the room or do the testimony or send in your stories. And then the Developmental Disability Council. So going to their website as well. SDAN is not, we can't do that. We don't have the infrastructure to do that. And the ARC Maryland already does it. And so does the council. So just getting in touch with those, if you want to see what bills, and it's not something just about developmental disabilities. It'll be a lot of education bills that would affect kids, and, transportation bills, and, just anything that's going on in Annapolis that could have an impact on somebody with a developmental disability. So, tap into those things that are already going on. I see there was a question about, is there any thought to doing some kind of event where you invite the legislators or hold something in Annapolis where people you could come and have some visibility with the staffers and such. And again, those organizations do that. So we're just a small little group of volunteers still at this point with no way of really pulling that kind of thing off. But we certainly promote it, and within the limited social media presence that we have is the Facebook group. We just pass along all the announcements of those kind of events that are going on. The ARC Maryland just had Calendar Day yesterday, where they have a presence in Annapolis as soon as the session starts, where they are people and self-advocates and other people are handing out calendars, and they are promoting some awareness of developmental disabilities. So there are events like that go on, and we try to at least make sure that you're aware of them through SDAN. We certainly are not in a position to sponsor one of those types of events. But it would be a good idea, maybe when we grow bigger and stronger.
I have one other little piece that's kind of going on the side, Patty, that SDAN would be interested to hear from you privately, to know what your total budget was for maybe FY24. What the total was, what the total allocation was, what the total budget was, and then how much was actually spent. As in, percentages, or some raw numbers and percentages, where it appears as though many people don't spend all of their allocated budget and don't spend all of their allocation, and then don't spend all of their budgeted amount either. And so we are trying to gather some, we have some gross numbers, but it would be interesting to get some FY24 numbers if anyone's inclined to do that. And then
that information could be anonymous. Absolutely.
Could be anonymous, absolutely. We wouldn't share anybody's actual numbers or names. I'm just looking to find out, 100 people told us, and of those 100 people, 50% didn't spend it all, or 100% didn't spend it all. So some kind of a knowledge base for FY24 until those numbers come in. But FY23, people who self-directed didn't spend all of their budgets. So, well, again, we'll close it one more time for real this time, and just say thanks again.